Hello, my name is Leslie, and I am the host of the Why Not Today podcast. This is a podcast to celebrate people who have been courageous and said, Why not today? I started this podcast in honor of my father, Patrick Kane, who often did say, Why not today? I'm based in Reston, Virginia, a planned community right outside of Washington, D.C., and thanks for joining us today. And I'm excited to have my guest, Katie Cleasby, on today. And I always like to share how I met somebody or connected. And Katie was instrumental in getting me off a couch and getting me out of fear. I share that often when I remember exactly where I met somebody, I'm like, they're going to be in my life forever. And you were one of those people, Katie. I was sitting on the couch in beginning of March, mid-March 2020. If everybody knows where we were. And I was a little terrified that I was like, how am I going to run a business? And just like we always do when we're a little fearful, we try to distract ourselves. So I was on social media and a site jumped out, or a comment somebody had on some site said, I'm looking for someone to help me with makeup. And so I reached out to Katie, and her mom was in town and wanted to play with some makeup. Well, it was right about when the world shut down. And so we decided we better do something virtual. And that's how we started. And since then, in the last 3 years, Katie and I have become great friends and gone through life together, some twists and turns in your life, Katie, and just feel like God definitely put you in my path and a reason for you in my life. And so I'm excited to have you share today, courageous things you've done in your life. And I didn't even realize what was going on in your life when I first met you. But why don't you just quick introduce a little about Katie and a fun fact about yourself, and then we'll get into the courage component. So.
Awesome. Well, yes, thank you so much, Leslie, for having me on the show today. And I'm excited to be here. My name is Katie Cleasby, and I am the owner and CEO and founder of Recspert, a two-sided marketplace to find and connect with recreation experts near you. And I met Leslie during the pandemic when I was getting my surgery, my first surgery. I was diagnosed with breast cancer. My mom was in town visiting, I was looking to, knock something off my list, which was get my professional photos done for my business as I was presenting at conferences, and wanted someone to help me with my makeup before I had those photos done. And so Leslie came into my garage. I want to say that afternoon I had surgery. I was literally.
I had no idea that you had surgery or going through any of that until probably months later, it seems like.
Yeah, I think I told you that day. I was like, "Oh, I just had surgery," and you were like, "Okay."
Like, all right.
I think I agreed to speak at a couple conferences that afternoon too, and they say no big decisions like the day when you're still kind of on anesthesia, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
That's what I love about you. You're out doing life and not letting it slow you down.
Well, what you go through cancer, and during the pandemic, right? I went right into 26 rounds of chemo after 2 surgeries and 33 rounds of radiation. I had the max of everything because I was only 32 at that point in time, and I couldn't have any visitors during chemo, but I made the best of it. And, I actually had not a little podcast, but I had cocktails with Katie, had chemo every Tuesday, and I would get groups of people together and we would play like online virtual games together. My aunt used to read me a story, and everyone had to bring a cocktail glass and wear a funky hat because I had a cold cap on. So I just kind of made the best of it. But when you go through hardships like that, and then my mom had been diagnosed with leukemia for the second time while I was going through my own cancer journey. And I ended up losing her that November and had to pause my cancer treatments to say goodbye to my mom, and then continue on my own cancer journey. So you realize really quickly that life is so short, right? Like my mom had just retired, and, she was 62, and she only had like a year or two of retirement, and had saved her whole life, had made all the right choices, had, not taken big risks, but kind of done the right thing. And so I just, any opportunity, I take it now.
Yeah, you know what? I live my life that way too. Like, you got to live life. And I've heard so many people that, again, work all their life for that end goal of retirement. And with my age, a lot of people are talking about retirement. And I'm like, are you going to retire? I'm like, heck no. People retire to sit on the couch, or retire, and then you don't know what's going to happen. Like, live life. And I think we both do a really good job with that. So before we get into the courage component, what's a fun fact about Katie?
Fun fact about Katie. Well, I love doing triathlons. So I just completed my first Ironman, Maryland last September. And yeah, so I'm here at a lake today, and I'm looking forward to swimming in the lake. Everyone thinks I'm crazy because I brought my wetsuit. So that's when you know you're
Yeah.
an athlete, when you
That's
show up
awesome.
to someone's lake house on your vacation. I'm like, I brought my wetsuit and my bathing cap and my goggles, and I'm very excited to swim.
Oh, that's awesome. And congratulations for the Ironman. That's an amazing accomplishment. I had my brother on my anniversary episode, and we talked about my dad encouraged, but we also talked about he did an Ironman. I don't know. Did you do it? What is the completed, I guess? I don't know what the
Yeah.
verb is. But the other day I was somewhere, and somebody I know who had started a fitness journey just the last couple of years pulled me aside. He's like, I listened to your podcast with your brother, and it inspired me to sign up for an Ironman myself. And so it's kind of fun to see how this podcast has encouraged people to do other things. So, all right. So before we get started talking about your courageous things, tell me, what is your definition of courage?
Yeah. Well, my definition of courage, I actually wrote down some notes. It's having the confidence to step outside your comfort zone and try something new that makes you scared or nervous.
Ooh, I like that.
It's taking a risk, essentially, when you have those butterflies or just feeling anxious, not necessarily anxiety, but feeling anxious about something, and knowing that, on the other side, it might change you for the better or improve, or it could be a really great experience or not, right? Like courage. I think courage too is just, sitting in that, and the pre-op, before you go into surgery. It takes courage to go into surgery too, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it could be good or bad, but facing something that's really scary and doing it anyway, I think.
Right. Yeah. And we don't know when we do step out and do those things. And we talked about before we came on, you got to have A, B, C, D, plan to Z. And I think every time you take that step of courage to do something, and even if it doesn't work out, it gives you the courage to take another step. You're still living. You're still kicking. You haven't, think about the worst thing that can happen. So you've had lots of courageous things in your life just since I've met you 3 years ago. And I would definitely want to talk about your business. So I don't know if you want to talk courage of your journey and with cancer treatment, your mom, your Ironman. You want to talk about triathlons? You could talk about your business. We could talk about
yeah, so many things. Can you
and
tell I'm type A?
And you're getting a PhD with all this going on.
Yes, I was writing my dissertation through chemo. Chemo took 7 hours because with the cold cap, it took like an hour to freeze your scalp, and then a couple hours to have the chemo, and then you had another hour to defrost your scalp. So I saw that almost like a plane ride. I'm like, oh, 7 hours that I can get so much done. But in the beginning,
that's what got me through grad school. Is I was traveling for business, and I was on lots of plane rides, and I could study on a plane. I'm like, this is the best time to study. No distractions.
Yeah, it was fun in the beginning. Not fun. Chemo's not fun, but there was 12 hard sessions, and I want to say the first 6 I could get things done, and then you start getting chemo brain. It's foggy. It was hard, and then towards the end it was really, really hard. But I would bring like a vat of caffeine, because they give you all these drugs that make you sleepy and tired. Most people just sleep, because time goes by fast. But I was like, caffeine, let's do this. Okay, so I'll talk about courage when starting my business, because I want to say that was the biggest step, the biggest risk.
When I met you, you were working for Clydemore Park in the aquatics department when I first met you. And then you ended up leaving that job and starting your own business. So that's super exciting.
Very abruptly, actually.
Okay.
I did not. Okay. Yeah, I did not know that I was planning that I was ever going to walk away in that moment on that Friday afternoon. But I did. I've always been
a why not today moment.
Oh my gosh, Leslie, 100%. I've always been good at making decisions. And when you know, I always say, when I met my husband, when I bought my first house, there are certain moments in your life you just know. And I knew, I just knew. And I called my husband and I was like, I need to do this. And he supported me the whole way. So I left Parks and Rec on a Friday. And I had planned to do a half Ironman in Atlantic City that Sunday. And so we literally, like, I came home from work. I was typing the resignation letter in the car on the drive to Atlantic City. And, you know, my friends and family were saying 24-hour rule, Katie, like, calm down, like, just, you know, send it on Monday, do your half Ironman. And I said, no, I know. I just know. Like, so I hit send. I showed up, had a great race, and it was the first race that I completed after chemo too. So I had trained for this half Ironman all through chemo. And so it was really important to me to finish that. And then that Monday, I was already like thinking of what I wanted to do. And I had known that in Parks and Rec during the pandemic, right? It was a physical building. That physical building shut down and everybody went outside. So I realized that people were still looking online. Where can I go for hiking, biking? You know, my kid wants a coach, and being in Parks and Rec, working at the front desk sometimes, or just being in aquatics, talking to parents, everybody was always asking me where they can find X, Y, Z, right? And so I realized that, you know, there were two-sided marketplaces out there to find contractors for your house, right? Why is there not anything for recreation, you know, component for that? And so I did my research and found out that there's fitness, there's sports coaches, but there's not really like hiking, biking, you know, kayaking, paddle boarding, things like that, and opportunities for families and just people in general to connect and be outside and recreate. That's the definition of recreation, right? Recreating yourself and through different experiences. And so I called up my business partner. At the time, he was somebody who worked in Parks and Rec with me. And he actually said, Katie Cleasby, you know, where are you going from aquatics, and how can I come along with you? Like, what are you doing now? Like, and so we formed a partnership initially. That Thursday, I think we met for lunch, and then we came up with the name, like, experts for recreation, like finding coaches, Recspert, you know, find and connect with a recreation expert, Recspert. So, and then Recspert was born.
That's awesome. I love that. And I love that you just jumped in and did it. And it's like, you know, that you know that you know. And so often we know that we know that we know, and then we survey everybody, and especially the people we don't even value their opinion, and we don't really care to ask. And that's, you know, how does this look on me? We always got to get the approval of somebody. But, you know, it's just, I did the same thing when I quit my job. It was a little more thought through, and it wasn't immediate, but for the couple months before I made that leap, everybody's like, are you sure you're going to do it? You sure I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Like, and haven't looked back.
Yeah. And I give you so much credit, Leslie. I mean, I will say, to the credit of my husband, like, I could not have done this without his emotional, financial, physical, all of it support, right? Like, he was right there. And, you know, to do that as not having a significant other, oh my gosh. So you have even more courage than I do when it came to that.
You know what? What's the worst that can happen? I knew I could sell products, and, you know, I can always get another job, which I've never had to do. So through the developing of your business, you're still in the launching phase. And I love that you have reached out and figured out ways to get resources and funding and some of those things. And I think this, as I shared in the beginning, this podcast is really a platform to encourage people to do the things. So if somebody's looking at starting a business, what are some of the resources you found to get some help?
Yeah. So the SBDC, Small Business Development Center, was so influential in the beginning. That was one of my first calls. And they set me up with what was called a program called ICAP, which was the Innovation Commercialization Assistance Program. And it's free. And they provided me with a mentor. And I got into it. And it was probably, I think, a 6-week course. But it almost took you step by step by step. And they encouraged us to do customer discovery and talk to people and write down your business plan and the value proposition. Why are you doing this on each side of it? And so once I got involved with ICAP, and then I want to make it clear that I'm not a small business, I'm a startup. So there's a huge difference between a small business and a startup. Just for instance, funding, right? The massive amounts of funding, and I'm not doing the skill myself, right? Like, I have to hire developers. Like, it's the tech, which makes a difference in startup. So a lot of the
So
mistakes.
ICAP for startup or small business or both?
ICAP was for startups. Yeah.
Okay.
But I want to say one of the biggest mistakes I made was following the path of a small businesses in the beginning. And if I could do it all over again, I mean, I used too many companies locally that were for small businesses that were not a good match as a startup. And then I want to say a year later, I got into the startup community in DC and got more connected to the startup resources that I needed and was finally in the right place. But I wasted tons of money and time. And unfortunately, I don't know, some people were connections and some just took me down bad paths. Obviously I won't name names or talk about any of that, but I felt like there was a solid 6-7 months that I wish I could just do it all over again.
Yeah. But you learned. So what lessons did you learn that you could share with other people other than, and I love the thing about the startup. I've never even thought about that with the Why Not Today brand, but I think it's definitely a startup.
Yeah. I mean, everyone has some people have different definitions of startups. Like, you know, you essentially, if you're a small business, you are starting up, but I needed funding, right? Like, and I was so grateful that when my mom had passed away, she had left me some inheritance funding, and I was able to take that funding and hire a developer and hire a marketing company, you know, initially early on, but you know, some of those early decisions led me down the wrong paths. I think I didn't know what you didn't know. And I don't know if I can give advice on that because it was such a huge pivot in careers. I had to go through it myself and, you know, I don't know if I'll ever go back to like a corporate business. I love being my own boss, and I already have ideas for my second startup after when this one becomes successful. But I would do it completely different based on the mistakes I made and now what I know in the beginning.
Right. And don't we all need that? And I think the difference with me and you in starting businesses, I started a business that was a direct selling business that had all the everything behind it, which I think is helping me tremendously with launching the Why Not Today brand. Is I've got the systems in place and all the things I've done for 20 some years in place. You know, when you've just worked for somebody, you haven't created a business, I think, you're definitely coming from a different place.
Right. Which is why startups are so incredibly hard. And like only 3% of funding goes to women too. So like being a female founder in technology startup space, I just was, you know, I have a handle on it now, but
that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So talk about the business, where you're taking it. What are you doing with it? How can you can support people in doing courageous things?
Yeah. So let's see. We launched our beta product last January and had some early adopters. But it was built on WordPress, which is like your basic, you know, website designer. And to be a startup, you need what's called intellectual property. IP, right? Something that's unique and that you can kind of change and manipulate as you grow. And WordPress doesn't allow for that. So we took it down and totally recoded it, found developers and coded it from the ground up to something that we wanted it to be, which was more of a user-friendly, two-sided marketplace where a busy family can go and type in what they're searching for. If you're looking for pickleball and and it generates different coaches and trainers and things that are local to you that you can message back and forth right on your phone and connect with them and choose them through profiles, reviews, ratings, things like that. So we just about, I want to say a few weeks out from launch for our MVP 2, I want to say, minimal viable product. So we're very excited about that. We've got about 50 early adopters we're working on getting on right now. But yeah, eventually once we launch, you'll be able to find not only solopreneurs, so like, you know, those who are coaches who have their own business, a small business, but also recreation centers. So one of the biggest pivots that we made in the last month was connecting with rec centers. So rec centers will be able to load all their classes so that as a parent or a local person or family individual, you'll be able to see all the recreation options, not just personal coaches, but the rec center too, so that you don't have to go multiple tabs across your search bar.
So with the coaches you work with, do they have to be local? Do you have them all over the country?
Well, for our marketing strategy, we want to start here in this area. So Virginia, Maryland, DC, and coincidentally for our research, this area is one of the top 5 areas and towns and cities and that invest in Parks and Rec in the United States.
Yeah.
So I think Norfolk was like number 5. So we'll grow from there and eventually, grow from East Coast to West Coast and scale that way. But we want it to be strategic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you're kind of the connector to all the resources to the public.
Yes. Yep. It's a subscription. It's for the experts in the rec centers. And so the families use it for free or individuals use it for free. And obviously you can purchase your services right on the platform. And so it's $39 a month for solopreneurs and $99 a month for the big rec centers to load up all their classes on there.
That's awesome. So I'm thinking about somebody I interviewed on my podcast that she's a health and fitness coach and she has a coaching business. Perfect. And works with people like nutrition and giving you your exercises and everything. And you have a coach you work with, everything's completely virtual. So she'd probably be a good partner with you and a good person. She's very, she's young. I keep saying that, but she's in her 20s, but she is wise beyond age in what she's been able to put together in this company.
Awesome. Love to meet her.
Yeah, definitely. So I know it's been courageous to keep going with this project. You've had some things that have not gone well. And we just talked about something that happened a couple weeks ago. And so talk about, and you don't have to give specifics of what hasn't gone well, but talk about, how do you get back up and how do you keep going and how do you not like throw in the towel and where do you get that resolve to say, or courage to just say, I'm not quitting?
Yeah, it's funny because so many people have asked me like, are you at that point yet? And I'm like, no, failure is not an option. We haven't even launched yet. Like that's not even my vocabulary. So yeah, one of the things that has been a biggest challenge for me in a startup is they say, you need a co-founder. So from day one, I wanted someone to do this with, right? And so I have gone through 3 co-founders now. And for whatever reason, they have left and I've got a board of advisors and everyone is now like, Katie, you're so strong. You can do this on your own. You don't need a co-founder.
Yeah, you don't need a co-founder, girl.
Yeah. Just keep going.
And what you said is so strong. And I was going to recommend is you have a board of advisors. So you don't have to have a co-founder, but you have your tribe, your mastermind group, your women, your people that surround you that are going to cheer you on and be able to mastermind and brainstorm with people. And I love doing that.
Oh yeah. I've found, and people have just, almost like, I guess, magnetic. They've reached out to me and it's funny how things happen for a reason because, one of the biggest things that I had to have courage was 2 weeks ago, my 3rd co-founder left the company and I'm allowed to talk about this legally now. So I'm just going to go for it. So he took all the code. He just removed access to my entire company for 2 years. And he took down our landing page. We were getting ready to pitch that Friday in a pitch competition. So here I am on Tuesday with no landing page and nothing to show for 2 years for Recspert. So long story short, we ended up getting it back, but there was, a couple days there that I had to dig deep. And, one of my old business coaches, Katie Nelson, has said to me, Katie, you have a plan A, B, and then all the way to Z. And I felt like I hit Z that day. And I was like,
then you go back to A.
Yeah. Well, she was like, then we started Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, the Zulu alphabet. So I was, working on Alpha at that point, and had to just keep going. So my husband was such a great supporter in that moment. I reached out to my advisory board, I used all my resources and I just took it day by day and leaned on the things that I could control. And I think in those moments, that's the phrase that I was in my head, like, what can I control right now? Because you have no control, right?
Right.
So I could control my Ironman training. Like I can go out and do, even things that have nothing to do with your business, like that makes me feel more grounded in the chaos that is happening around me. So
and you just randomly slipped that in. We talked about it before, but I don't think you actually said that you have, or you did. I guess we did talk about the Ironman and triathlons. I mean, and that's just such a major thing too. I mean, all the courage and all the things.
Oh yeah. I mean, and everyone's like, oh, you do all these things, but I'm scared. I'm super scared inside.
I'm scared.
Yeah. I don't know. So I'm able to just push beyond that. And I think I've lost a lot of really important, special people in my life early on. And I've gone through cancer and I've gone, like, I feel like you name it, I've gone through it. And, the day I finished my last chemo for breast cancer, I found out I had skin cancer and I had a chunk of my neck removed. Like, so it's just not worth it. Like, if it's going to be good, just do it. Like we were on the lake yesterday and I said, I'm going to jump off and go swimming. And they're like, it's cold, it's early, it's May. And then I got the whole boat. We all jumped off the boat, but it was just such a why not today moment. I thought of you yesterday and I was like, let's just do it. What's the worst that could happen? That you're cold and there's towels when you get back up. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like cold is not going to kill you. Yeah. So, and my computer's beeping for some reason. All right. So lots of courageous things. And I just love, and I can't wait to see your business launch. And we definitely need to schedule another brainstorming. There was a reason you reached into my life because of makeup, and look where it's taken. And we've been able to share ideas and brainstorm. And, I think you'd be a great partner too for the Why Not Today brand and encouraging people to get out and exercise and, just get started. I used to, and I know this is a connection we had when I taught water aerobics. I used to tell people, like, just think about how you're going to feel at the end of the day when you put your head on the pillow, if you did or you didn't. And I think, exercise and starting business and all those things, saying why not today is also important. Just doing it. So
yeah, it's a great phrase.
What would you do to encourage somebody else to be courageous? Which ironically, I never thought about it. The word encourage has courage in it.
That's a tough question. I've always struggled with that. I feel like sometimes I do that naturally, organically when there are people around me and people have told me that, like I do it, but I don't know how to articulate how I do it.
Okay. So if somebody wanted to start their own business, quit their job, compete in an Ironman, fight cancer, like all those things you've gone through.
I would say just do it, and what's stopping you? Life is too short. Like a friend of mine just bought a beautiful house in Florida and, she's close to retirement and she's like, oh, it's a long plan. Like we're going to be down there in their 70s and then we're going to do X, Y, Z. And I said, what is holding you back? Like, just do it. Just go move down to Florida. Like life is too short.
Right.
And I honestly, it's a phrase that everybody says, like, life's too short. But it really is. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. And so when you lose people at an early age, it really is too short. Should we be also lucky to get to retirement and to be in a retirement house, whether it's on a lake or in Florida, or to get to your retirement plan,
right.
If you can get there. Yeah. So I would say, I don't know, like live life to the fullest. Like I said, should we all be so lucky to live to 100 and do all the things? Like every year, I want to look back and be like, what did I accomplish? What did I do? I want to live life to the fullest in that moment, as much as possible. But
love it. Yeah. Great answer. And, so I always, in the questions I give all my guests, I'm like, how do you connect to my dad? And people are like, I never met your dad. How could I possibly connect? But really it's as I talk to my guests, I mean, some of my guests have met my father, or had met him. But I really kind of see where you can connect and where similarities. So the first thing before we even started recording was we talked about plan A, B, C, or D. And he was definitely that kind. He was by trade a planner. And I mentioned that in his, when he passed away, his eulogy, my brothers talked about, he did have a plan A, B, and C. And his life, the path he ended up in where I am was because of plan A and B didn't work. and your whole philosophy of just living life and live life to the fullest. I think my dad was a great example of that. That he and our logo, and I've talked about this before. The logo is my dad's logo, and he had an eye patch and a handlebar mustache, and he had the eye patch since the night he or not immediately, but he got in a car accident the night he graduated from high school and almost died. And he was in the hospital in traction for months, and they didn't think he'd make it. And he did, and he was supposed to play football for USC, I think, and that didn't work. So in the day, he decided instead he would just go to Notre Dame. Can you imagine a kid today just deciding, I'm going to go to Notre Dame instead? But he got on a train and went to Notre Dame, and instead that was his plan B. And then he almost died in another car accident. And so lots of, why not today moments that he taught me, like live your life. I remember one time I wrecked his car in high school and I was devastated. I thought he was going to kill me. And he was out of town. I didn't want to talk to him. I was afraid. And he came back with flowers for me. And he said, you're alive. Who cares about the car? Like, you're alive, and that's all that matters. And so definitely live by that example, which you're living. Like, just do it, do the things. And I love how you're enjoying life. And like, you're in a lake house right now in Tennessee. I'm in a lake house in Southern Virginia, and we can work wherever. We keep talking about how you have a place at the beach that we need to plan an excursion there and just kind of escape and go play. So lots of good lessons. So thank you so much for being on. And so if somebody wants to find you, we will share this with in the show notes, but if somebody wants to find you, where are the best places to find you and connect?
Yeah. Well, our website is, recspert.com, RECSPERT. And our Instagram is at Recspert, and my Instagram is at Katie Cleasby. So you can just email me at the Recspert, info@recspert.com too, and happy to connect.
Great. Well, thank you again for being on, and I loved getting to know even more about you. And so if you want to follow the podcast, we are on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Google. You can go to our website, which is whynottodaypodcast.com. Would love to have guests review us, rate us, share it with your friends, let other people know that you're here and that you watched. And just remember, say why not today. And also on the website, I do have some swag. We've got cups and t-shirts and vinyls. I'm thinking about some journals as another thing. So we're just seeing where this is going to go. So again, Katie, thanks for joining us. And
thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And thanks everybody for listening. Have a great day or watching.
Bye.
Bye.